He was loud, confrontational, and built his whole narrative on dominance. And then, just like that, silence. No farewell, no final episode, no post-show confessional. One of 90 Day Fiancé's most volatile, headline-generating cast members banned from the franchise without a single word from the network. Not a formal goodbye, not a clip package, not even a meme. Andrei Castravet didn't get written out. He got erased. But reality TV never deletes a villain unless they're afraid of what might come next. This wasn't a character burnout. This had the energy of a cover-up. I'm Oliva, and you're watching Reality Sport, where we don't just recap the drama, we investigate the behavior behind it. Hit that comment box if you remember the moment it all fell off, when even TLC couldn't spin the story anymore. Let's get into it, because once you realize who Andrei was before he stepped into Florida, things start making sense fast, but not in a good way. On the show, he played the huffing, old-school husband who clashed with his wife's outspoken family. But off camera? Reports from Moldova paint a wildly different picture. Multiple threads from Eastern European forums have described Andrei as a former cop. Not just any cop, either. A man linked to the specialized police force in Moldova with alleged experience in asset control and interrogation strategy. And then something happened. He leaves all that behind, moves to Ireland, becomes a nightclub bouncer overnight, drains the past away, and swipes right on Elizabeth. Just a bouncer looking for love? Or a man making fast moves in unfamiliar territory? In my opinion, that wasn't a reset. That was clean exit energy. Andrei once told the cameras he was tired of being judged for not wanting to work. But what if working was never the goal? What if the plan was to become indispensable in other ways, through family ties, legal status, and financial hands-on influence? Then, you zoom out. Look at how fast he pivoted from I need a job to pressuring her dad for 5-figure loans. Look at how strategically he escalated fights to push out Elizabeth's siblings. Look at how conveniently all that chaos made him the only one Chuck could trust. Think about that. You start with nothing in America, and in under 5 seasons, you're flipping properties under your father-in-law's name while collecting fan sympathy points for being misunderstood. But here's what they didn't show you. The moment production started asking real questions, the silence began. Andrei's storyline didn't end because it got boring. It ended because he may have crossed an invisible line, one where the legal risks outgrew the entertainment value. Because even before TLC cut him loose, small things started shifting. Confessionals trimmed short, till all segments abruptly redirected. Other castmates looking nervous, like someone had been warned off camera. And when that final tell all never aired in full, when fans noticed edits that didn't match what was teased, speculation exploded. Allegations surfaced about recorded outbursts, unedited threats, and behind-the-scenes legal backlash so serious, parts of the footage had to be pulled entirely. Not suspended, not reworked, buried. But when you trace backward from the ban, it doesn't start at the last episode. It starts in Moldova, before Elizabeth, before TLC, before America. And that's where the next bomb drops. Because what Andrei left behind in Europe may explain everything that came next. Keep watching, because the trail he thought would stay hidden, we found the first breadcrumb. On screen, Andrei always had this odd mix, half silent, half aggressive. One episode, he was scowling in the corner during family disputes. The next, he was stomping into Chuck's house, demanding money like a mob boss with a baby stroller. But the real tension? It was never about what he said. It was what he never explained. Because the story he gave TLC was thin, too thin. Andrei claimed he left Moldova for a fresh start, said he got tired of the corruption, wanted a better life. That sounds noble. But here's the problem. People don't give up law enforcement careers in their 20s to bounce drunk tourists out of Irish nightclubs, unless something went off the rails. Go back far enough, and you'll find it. A sudden departure from the police force that nobody wants to detail. No official record publicly connecting him to a scandal, but a consistent trail of whispers on Moldovan forums about a falling out with higher-ups, about disappearing debts, about getting out before someone higher on the ladder made him a scapegoat. And the jump wasn't gentle. Moldova to Ireland, then, barely settled in, he's got a visa to America on a K-1, courtesy of an American woman with big family money behind her. Ask yourself this. If you're trying to disappear cleanly, what better place than in plain sight, behind an ENDA, a wedding license, and enough family drama to distract an entire network audience? Why bounce from country to country so fast, unless you're trying to escape something or get to something? The timeline's tight. Andrei's move to Ireland wasn't years long. It was a pause. A stopover. His arrival in Florida wasn't a coincidence. Neither was meeting Elizabeth on a dating app. This wasn't a love story that just clicked. It's far more believable, in my opinion, that he saw something bigger when he matched with her. Her last name, her lifestyle, the breadcrumbs leading to her dad's real estate portfolio. And here's where his charm worked overtime. Because Andrei didn't show up as broke or desperate. He showed up like he had nothing to prove, demanding respect, demanding a future, before anyone could ask why he had no past. He told Chuck he needed support, but it didn't take long before he was demanding to be inside the business. No internship, no sweat equity. He fast-forwarded through every stage. That's not laziness. That's leverage. And you know what leverage looks like? It looks like someone who already has the answer to questions nobody else wants asked, especially if he knew something about the pothouse finances that everyone else was trying to keep off camera. Compare that to others on the cast. Most cast members work up to trust. Andrei walked in like he already owned a seat at the table. That's not guts. That's a tactic. Even during family fights, his reactions weren't random. Watch the tapes again. He wasn't blowing up because he couldn't control his temper. He was flaring up in exact moments when someone started pushing too close to something real. Becky demands transparency. He explodes. Charlie questions his motives. Cut to commercial. Jen mentions past employment. Suddenly, Elizabeth's crying, and we're focused on her trauma, not his resume. That's not accidental storytelling. That's redirection on a rotating loop. And what if swiping right on Elizabeth wasn't fate, but phase one in a long-term plan to embed himself inside a crumbling empire that needed cleanup and cover? Hold that thought, because the next part pulls her in too. Elizabeth didn't just fall hard. She bent her orbit around Andrei in record time. But was she in love? Or picking a side in a family war she was tired of losing? When Elizabeth first introduced Andrei on 90 Day Fiancé, she had that nervous smile energy, the kind that says, I hope this works, and I dare you to question it, all at once. She talked over him a lot, especially in the beginning, spoke for him, smoothed things over, presented him like a misunderstood good guy with a strong personality. But even back then, something felt off. She was glowing like someone in love, but her body language said defense mode. So, what did she see in him? Maybe it was the accent, the protector energy. Maybe he was a break from the noise. Because no matter how intense Andrei seemed, he still felt simpler than her family. He wasn't messy. He wasn't flaky. He made decisions and stuck to them. And a girl who's been playing referee her whole life, that kind of certainty can feel like safety. But what starts as attraction can quietly flip into something else. From the moment Andrei landed, isolation started creeping in. She stopped answering her sisters, stopped inviting them to things. Suddenly, family events had separate guest lists. Then came the whole thing with her dad. Andrei wanted access, but only if the siblings stayed out. And Elizabeth? She backed him at every turn, loudly. It didn't happen all at once. That's how these things usually go. One fight becomes, let's not tell them this. One argument becomes, we'll handle it ourselves. Then suddenly, you've moved cities, your husband manages your career, and no one's allowed in the delivery room when you give birth. It wasn't just emotional loyalty. It was strategic pairing. And here's where we start asking the hard question no one on the show ever dared to say out loud. Was Elizabeth played, or was she playing along? Because from the outside, it looks like she was the casualty. The woman stuck between a domineering husband and a manipulative family. But when you rewind the footage, her alignment with Andrei doesn't look like submission. It looks like choices. Strategic ones. She knew what her siblings were. She knew how they would react. Every time she whispered something to Andrei before a scene, every time she warned him about what Charlie might say, she was feeding the fire with her own kindling. Were they just an inseparable couple? Or two business partners running the world's most personal long con? She's no fool. Long before fans started calling out red flags, Elizabeth had already switched up her career, her social circle, even her online voice. She discreetly stopped referencing her sisters. Her captions became less personal and more curated. Her YouTube vlogs weren't relatable chaos. They were controlled narratives. That's not what you do when you're helpless. That's what you do when you're aligning. And when it came to the weddings, yes, plural, that hindsight lens hits hard. Florida felt chaotic. Moldovan felt controlled. Elizabeth wore the crown. Her family sat in the shadows. Andrei ruled the room. Weddings are usually a celebration, but these felt staged. Almost like checkpoints. Like, here's proof I belong. Here's proof she's mine. Here's proof that anyone who doubts it can pay their own way home. And if every wedding was a step closer to locking down the structure, what role did love really play in this timeline? Because if this was loyalty, it came with a price tag. And if it was partnership, it came with a contract. And the line between the two gets blurrier the closer you look. Next, was Chuck really just a giving dad? Or did Elizabeth and Andrei treat him like an unlocked vault with no security camera? Chuck Pothast always had that I'm just trying to keep the peace energy. The sighs, the dad hats, the forced grilled burgers during every cookout war. You could almost feel how badly he wanted everyone to get along. But what if peace wasn't the goal? What if keeping the house from burning down was code for keeping certain documents from being exposed? Because the second Andrei arrived in Florida, he started positioning himself closer to Chuck's inner circle than any of Elizabeth's siblings ever managed to get. Not by charm, not by effort, but by force. And Chuck let it happen. We saw it in the early seasons with those awkward job conversations. Andrei refusing to take anything entry-level, turning up his nose at driving trucks or working under someone else. Any other fiancé would have been humble, grateful. Andrei? He walked straight in and started negotiating like he was owed a steak. And Chuck? He didn't slam the door. He opened his wallet, house-flipping training sessions that somehow came with 5-figure loan requests. Business pitches with zero planning, but $100K expectations. And every time the siblings screamed, why him? Chuck went soft. Conflicted, sure. But not resistant. He gave the money. He made the deals. And when everything blew up, he rationalized it like a dad who was too tired to fight. Not a businessman supervising 5-figure contracts. So, was he naive or in on it? Because let's not act like Chuck's real estate records are squeaky clean. Whispers of handshake deals. Off-book transfers. LLCs moving in and out of family members' names. And what do people do when they want to shuffle assets in a sketchy portfolio? They find a name not yet tied to the system. Andrei, conveniently, was perfect for that role. No American debt. No local financial footprint. Easy to plug in, hard to trace later. Even that fake mentorship arc during the house flipping scenes felt staged. Chuck looked more like someone onboarding a buffer, not a mentee. Andrei didn't take notes. He didn't shadow. He demanded. We saw him ask for control on day one. And Chuck, exhausted, maybe scared, gave it. Why? Because the family didn't trust Andrei. Not from the beginning. Not even close. So, why did Chuck put him front and center? Was it guilt for not helping Elizabeth more as a young adult? Was it loneliness? A need for male camaraderie? Or did Andrei walk in with information so uncomfortable it forced Chuck into silence? We've seen this before. When someone new enters a legacy business, causes chaos, and still gets paid out, follow the money, sure. But also look at what didn't get said. There's a moment burned into fans' brains. Andrei cornering Chuck in that half-done backyard project, practically threatening him over future investment. And Chuck? He folds. No yelling. No how dare you. He pulls out the checkbook. That wasn't a father-in-law decision. That looked like a man paying for something to go away. And here's where it gets heavy. The strings weren't being pulled in the open. They were threaded quietly, behind family drama arcs and confessional sob stories. But look at the outcomes. Each loan bought Andrei more control. Each flipped house repositioned him on paper. Each argument drove a sibling out of the room. And him, deeper into Chuck's ear. Suddenly, Andrei isn't just the foreign son-in-law. He's the second in command. And Chuck, despite all warnings, despite every red flag, lets him stay there. So next question. Was he being outsmarted or buying protection? Because if there's one thing worse than getting played, it's paying someone to pretend it isn't happening. But when the siblings started disappearing from meetings, from deals, from invites, Charlie, Jen, Becky, you gotta ask. Were they walking away? Or were they being erased? Some families fall apart slowly. The Pothasts? They were split like a chessboard, one move at a time, one sibling at a time, and always in Andrei's favor. From the start, the sibling energy was chaotic, sure, but unified in one thing, none of them trusted Andrei. Becky didn't like his tone. Jen clocked his arrogance. Charlie saw him as a threat. No one was playing subtle. But if you look closely, the louder their suspicions became, the faster they disappeared from the frame. Andrei didn't fight with the family for drama. He fought to rearrange the order. Every argument seemed emotional. At first, but the pattern hits hard when you slow it down. These weren't random fights. They were eliminations. It starts with Charlie. Classic golden son energy. The one who called the shots and spoke over people. Problem was, he also came with baggage. Drinking accusations. Party antics. Andrei didn't have to invent the dysfunction. He just had to amplify it. Cut to the yacht. The fight. The moment that TLC was definitely hoping would go viral, but ended up looking like a setup. Charlie snaps, Andrei shoves back, the crew intervenes, and right after? Charlie's credibility nosedives. He starts getting edited like the family liability. Suddenly, he's not safe to be around. Confidence becomes instability. And who steps up behind the scenes? Andrei. Cool, collected, conveniently more involved than ever. First pawn off the board. Game on. Then comes Becky. She's vocal, calculated, and very aware of how things are shifting. Watch her energy change each season. Early Becky had full access, pitches, meetings, equal voice. Then comes the pushback. The confrontation during house meetings. Andrei interrupts. She calls him out. He lashes back. Suddenly, Becky becomes difficult. Cue the edit, turning her into the jealous sister. Her input is drama, not strategy. Andrei, meanwhile, starts using words like unprofessional whenever she's around. Shots fired. Then there's Jen, the one who watched quietly, picked her battles, but always saw straight through Andrei's moves. She didn't make noise, but she asked questions, especially the kind Andrei hated. Do you have experience with this business? Why aren't you filing paperwork? Where exactly is that money going? So, of course, she gets clipped next. Fewer scenes, weaker edits, then full silence. It wasn't just family fatigue. It looked like a purge. Because once they were out of the way, the access pipeline opened. Bigger flips, bigger checks, bigger role for Elizabeth. Andrei now has Chuck's ear in his money, influence over his wife's career, plus real estate assets changing hands faster than TLC could edit. And let's be honest, if this had happened to any other family on reality TV, fans would have called it a hostile takeover by season 3. But TLC sold it as culture clashes, sibling rivalry, quirky in-law drama. Meanwhile, boardroom-level shifts were happening in the background. Family members weren't stepping back. They were being pushed out, one scene at a time. And here's a detail that gets overlooked. None of the siblings left loudly. They didn't rage quit. They faded out. Which raises the real question. Did they leave? Or did someone behind the scenes decide their contracts weren't worth Andrei's wrath? Because let's not pretend the production team didn't know who they were dealing with. Andrei spent half his scenes either threatening to walk off or demanding editorial control of how he looked. That's not cast member behavior. That's someone negotiating leverage. Someone who knew how to orchestrate power plays, on-screen, off-screen, and inside the family. So, was he dismantling Elizabeth's family to protect her? To build something better? Or was this always about thinning the herd until only his people were left standing? Because the siblings weren't Andrei's competition on camera. They were his obstacles off paper. And once the field was clear, the only person left between him and the full empire was the man who wrote the checks. And when money's involved, loyalty doesn't always mean love. It sometimes means leverage. That yacht wasn't just a boat. It was a battlefield. On paper, it was supposed to be a filmed family bonding moment. Sunshine, champagne, a little tension for the edits. But every single person watching that episode felt the shift as soon as Charlie walked aboard. Andrei was already simmering. The tension needed no build-up. That camera wasn't capturing reality. It was catching a setup. Charlie, historically cocky, had been drinking. We knew that. But this time, the way it played out didn't look like spontaneous chaos. It looked like strategic exposure. From the second he approached, Andrei postured. Wide stance, squared shoulders, chest out. He didn't de-escalate, didn't avoid, didn't redirect. He waited. Waited for Charlie to say the wrong thing. Because when he finally did, all hell broke loose. Glass clinked, voices blurred, shouting echoing off the water. But step back from the fight and watch the framing. Who looked like the aggressor? Who looked out of control? Who remained standing when production pulled them apart? It wasn't Andrei. It was Charlie who spiraled, who slurred, who shouted over producers, who left with his own father looking, honestly, ashamed. And just like that, the air was humiliated. It was more than a viral moment. It was a fracture that never healed. From that day forward, Charlie was cast as the unstable black sheep, a man who couldn't handle pressure, couldn't be trusted with responsibility, couldn't even be given airtime without a disclaimer. Andrei? He came out of it gruff, but somehow more mature, more reasonable by comparison. And immediately after that fight, Chuck started excluding Charlie from meetings. Family dinners turned cold. Chuck's business talks went from group events to one-on-ones with Andrei. That boat wasn't a fight. It was a removal. Intentional or not, it worked. Because with Charlie burned out and the sisters already pushed back, guess who slipped into the vacuum of leadership? Guess who went from the guy who needs to earn it to the guy we trust to manage it? Andrei. The next time Chuck greenlit a loan or signed off on another property move, It wasn't even brought to the full family. It was Andrei and Chuck. Maybe Elizabeth. But not Charlie. Not anymore. That power shift didn't take years. It happened between one yacht fight and the next season premiere. You didn't even need a spreadsheet to track it. You just needed to watch who held the contracts. And when it came time for calls on finances, Chuck didn't ask his son. He asked his son-in-law, a man he had only known for a blink compared to the son he raised. Tell me, what kind of alpha personality walks away from that unless they know they're not getting that spot back? Charlie started flailing, publicly questioning the show, rumors about legal frustration behind the scenes, possible substance concerns. Nothing confirmed, but everything felt loaded. Meanwhile, Andrei ascended. He took on more, closed off more, excluded more. And when fans asked why Charlie wasn't there, the answer was always vague. The edit said, drama. But behavior says Charlie was no longer useful. And that's the thing about a setup. It has to be believable enough to look like it happened on its own. The audience has to think someone destroyed themselves, so no one notices the strings. But the silence after that episode? That wasn't guilt. That was victory. And the bigger question becomes, once Andrei replaced Charlie in Chuck's trust, what exactly did he have access to? And what did he do with it? Deportation always hits hard. It's one of the fastest ways to trigger real emotions from both the cast and the viewers. And TLC milked that for every second. Remember the long silences? The shaky, handheld footage outside the lawyer's office? The tension you could feel through the screen as Andrei said things like, "I don't know what will happen to me." Except, he absolutely did. The whole thing was edited to feel like his life in America was hanging by a thread. Like at any moment, one badly filed document could send him back to Moldova. Alone, ripped away from his wife, from his baby. And Elizabeth? She played her part, crying in interviews, clutching his hand in lawyer scenes, whispering things like, "I can't lose you." It felt raw, real, urgent. But was it? Because when you line up the timelines and strip back the drama, the legal reality doesn't match the plot. Andrei was married to a U.S. citizen with a baby. There was zero chance of deportation under those conditions, unless major fraud or criminal charges were in play. And if those existed, they would have been public record. The kind of details TMZ would have had hours after any episode dropped. But nothing came. Not even a traffic ticket with his name on it. So, why did the storyline keep escalating? Lawyers were shown stressing over paperwork. The show leaned hard into terms like permanent resident status under review. But scroll through any basic immigration forum and you'll find that delays don't mean deportation. They mean waiting. Then why was Elizabeth sobbing like this was the end of their life? Because the real goal wasn't legal. It was emotional. Convince Elizabeth her husband is under threat. Convince the audience her family is part of the problem. Manufacture isolation right in front of rolling cameras. And the most powerful tool in manipulation isn't yelling. It's fear. Andrei let the storyline run wild. Never corrected anything publicly. Never jumped on socials to clarify. He let fans think ICE could knock on their door at any moment. He let Elizabeth spiral in private and public because the deeper her fear sank, the more she clung to him. That's not suspense. That's psychological anchoring. Make them scared enough to lose you, and you become irreplaceable, even if the threat isn't real. It also made great TV, which makes it even easier to hide in plain sight. The audience rooted for him because no one wants to see a tearful mother raise her baby without the father. But while all that sympathy was building, something else was happening in the background. Something with real consequences. Property access. Chuck opening more doors. Elizabeth stepping back from her job to be home more. Andrei walked through every one of those doors, while TLC dangled the distraction of deportation. And if anyone in her family had questions during that time, guess what the answer was? Now isn't the time. Everyone was on emotional lockdown. Nobody wanted to confront someone fighting to stay in the country. It would look heartless at best, or xenophobic at worst. He created the perfect shield. And if it was all theater, he nailed the casting. Because while the family was distracted, worrying about whether he'd be allowed to stay, the real question should have been, what was going into his name while nobody was paying attention? The minute Andrei started talking about moving back to Moldova, most fans thought it was culture shock catching up. Homesick guy wants to raise his kids in his homeland. Sweet, right? Except why now? Why, after years of fighting for a green card, locking down Chuck's trust, and slowly cutting every sibling out of the business pipeline? Why suggest a full relocation after building a life, family, and financial footprint in Florida? Because this didn't look like homesickness. It looked like an exit strategy. A very quiet one, rolled out smoothly, disguised as sentiment. The timing was no accident. At this point, the public wasn't buying the Andrei redemption arc. Fans were turning. Reddit threads were tearing holes in his backstory. Castmates looked noticeably less willing to film with him. Then came the financial content, vague statements about house flips, LLC paperwork that started showing gaps, and rumors that the ears might have started poking around after an eyebrow-raising second wedding budget. And suddenly, Moldova looked real nice. Elizabeth wasn't enthusiastic. You could see it all over her face. She looked stunned when he first brought it up on camera. That wasn't a couple decision. That was a move being announced. One that had apparently been in motion off camera for a while. Here's where things start to really take shape. Online property records in Moldova showed something interesting. A commercial building, spacious, upscale, and way out of budget, for someone who didn't have visible income pre-show, suddenly registered to a Castravet. But it wasn't Andrei. It was his father. Cash purchase. No U.S. paper trail. That alone should have triggered 1,000 alarms behind the scenes. Because if Andrei built something overseas with the money he was supposedly using for projects in Tampa, let's ask the obvious question. Was any of that money ever meant to come back? Or was the Florida chapter just phase one of a long game built to fund his real empire somewhere beyond TLC's reach? Let's put the timeline together. First, he secures the long-term green card. Then, the fake deportation fear fizzles. Right after that, the Florida house flips start getting quiet online. Content gets vague. Less behind-the-scenes footage. Chuck's on-camera presence fades. Then comes the Moldova wedding. Flashy, expensive, fully funded by Chuck. A few customs sprinkled in for the storyline, but mostly, it looked like a business trip with party decorations, cash exchanges, travel logistics, and zero follow-up on where that money actually went. Andrei called it a dream come true. Dream or deal. Because once you connect the dots between US-based funding and Moldovan asset growth, something becomes crystal clear. He wasn't losing interest in Florida. He had already extracted everything he needed. Elizabeth, to her credit, hesitated, but by then, how much access did she still have? How many deeds had her name on them? How much control did she actually hold in the family's financial system? Fans always assumed she was riding shotgun. But what if she wasn't even in the GPs? And here's what sends this whole thing spinning. That property in Moldova, the one allegedly tied to the same figure as Chuck's failed loans, it's not in Elizabeth's name. It's not listed under any marital structure. It's not tied to any Florida LLC. It's in Andrei's father's name. Which means if Elizabeth ever left, she wouldn't walk away with a dime of it. No leverage. No property. Nothing to her name in the empire she helped bankroll with her status, her platform, and her father's money. So tell me, was this ever truly a homecoming? Or was it a silent retirement plan disguised as tradition? And if Moldova was where the money ended up, what was Andrei's next move if the family ever figured it out? At first, Elizabeth came across like the girl next door. Messy, fun, reactive, emotional. You could feel her voice in those early Instagram posts. The long captions, the filter slightly off, the chaos of family life seeping through the grid. It felt real, even when it was curated. But then something shifted. Slowly, quietly, but noticeably. Her content got cold, more polished, less heart, more performance. The sentences got tighter, the tone more defensive. And the captions? Suddenly, they didn't sound like a woman balancing motherhood and marriage. They read like statements, like PR responses, like someone was talking through her. The human touch was gone. And here's where it gets weird. Because that shift didn't line up with a personal milestone. It wasn't tied to the birth of their child or a new business. It lined up almost exactly with Andrei's grip on the family tightening. Timeline check. When the fights with her siblings reached peak volume, her captions started matching his phrasing. When Jen or Becky would say something on the show, Libby's Instagram would echo his talking points, not hers. We're not talking about alignment. That's normal, even expected. This was mimicry. The same aggressive tone, dismissive of criticism. Statements like people will always be jealous or real strength threatens the weak. Stuff that sounded like it came straight from his confessional sound bites, not from the woman who used to post about Target hauls and dad jokes. Andrei's influence moved from her real life to her public voice, not just in strategy, but in syntax. Early Libby posts were personal, scattered, full of soft language. Words like feeling, trying, learning. That fell off a cliff. By year 4, she was writing in absolutes. Zero room for vulnerability. Almost like someone else was holding the password. Now, do we know for a fact Andrei was managing her socials? No. But several rumors say he took over back-end scheduling, management of brand deals, and all business-related DMs. It tracks. During one episode, he even shamed her for reaching out to brands without running it by him first. Later, that never became an issue, because suddenly, someone was clearly steering the ship. Here comes the real question. What happens when you lose your personal voice, your creative outlet, and access to your family in the same 2-year period? Is that empowerment or isolation? Libby used to post singing videos, TikToks with her sisters, behind-the-scenes fun from filming. That all vanished. In its place, sterile family portraits, corporate-style reels, and brand content too generic to feel human. The emotion went missing. Her pregnancy photos used to glow. The second time around, they were edited within an inch of reality. Everything carefully posed, and not a single close friend or sibling in sight. Not even Jen. And that's what made fans' alarms go off. Because whether you loved or hated the Pothass sisters, one thing was clear in the early seasons: they were close. Close enough to fight like that. Close enough to stop filming and still be in each other's lives. But now, Libby's content tells a different story. No comments from her sisters. No tags. No mentions. She's an influencer with a following based on family, and the family is gone. And here's another twist. Even when she's posting about her kids, her husband is always included. Not just sometimes. Every single post. People noticed. The comments started shifting. Some fans asked, why does it feel like he's always watching from behind the screen? Was it paranoia? Projection? Or was she playing the role of wife in real time for a very real consequence if she stopped? And then came the tradwife arc. Suddenly, her content leaned toward a very specific image. Domestic, submissive, soft, but controlled. The sundress in the kitchen aesthetic. The piano-playing husband. The business-minded wife turned Pinterest mom. Andrei spoke often about gender roles. About men leading their families. About protecting theirs by keeping outside voices out. And Libby? She adapted fast. She stopped pushing boundaries and started posting gratitude. Compare that to early season Libby, the one who fought with him in Moldova, clapped back during weddings, and held her own during screaming matches with brothers and sisters, who made every scene feel like therapy without a license. Is it growth? Maturity? A woman learning to pick her battles? Some say yes. Others say it looks like surrender. And here's why fans are split. If she's happy, if that household truly works for her, then who are we to judge? Some people do want a quieter life, want fewer voices, fewer obligations, simpler days. But happiness usually shows in the eyes, in the spontaneity of your content. And Elizabeth stopped posting like a woman at peace. She started posting like someone fulfilling deliverables. And for someone who used to thrive in front of chaos, silence didn't signal healing. It screamed constraint. So, was she trapped? Or was she upgraded? Because here's the uncomfortable possibility. What if she chose this? Not because she was manipulated, but because she saw what Charles, Becky, and Jen never could. That standing next to the man trying to take the crown might have been better than waiting her turn for scraps. Maybe she didn't lose her sisters. Maybe she left them behind. But here's the risk with that kind of alignment. You tie your future to someone else's reputation, power, and pace. And when their house of cards starts wobbling, you're falling with it. And what if she knows that, but still stays? Because the final act wasn't just about what Elizabeth believed. It was about what she helped bury. It was the most awkward silence in 90-day Fiancé history. The season 9 tell-all was rolling like usual, bickering, fake apologies, those tight couches nobody looks comfortable on. Then suddenly, cut. Audio fuzzed. One camera angle froze mid-reaction. The feed clipped like a last-minute live stream error. But this wasn't live. This was post-produced, deliberately spliced. And guess who was mid-sentence when it happened? Andrei Castravet. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't storming out of the set. He was leaning forward, speaking low, calm, almost smug. And every cast member on that couch looked like they'd seen something they weren't supposed to. No one laughed. No one clapped back. No one moved. That moment wasn't drama. That was control shifting inside the room. And TLC shut it down faster than you can say, we can't legally air that. So what actually happened? Theories vary, but here's what fans, ex-cast members, and even crew leaks have suggested. Andrei made a threat. Allegedly, not physical, but legal. According to some behind-the-scenes chatter, he may have named names, referenced emails, and implicated real people in off-camera business deals that TLC never wanted the public to hear about. In that room, surrounded by cameras, contracts, and cast, Andrei might have finally snapped the quiet tension that production had been trying to mask for years. And the network panicked. This isn't new in reality TV. NDAs are standard. But emergency NDAs? Retroactive ones? Allegedly handed out after that scene? That's not normal. Word is, the footage still exists, stored in archival servers. Too risky to touch. Too explosive to delete. Some editors reportedly quit weeks after. Cast members, many of whom were vocal on socials in previous years, went oddly silent after the season aired. Andrei and Libby went completely dark. No reunion post, no follow-ups, no clarifications, no denial, just gone. One day they were on every fifth sponsored post, sharing vlogs, smiling from rented Airbnbs. Then, total blackout. Their absence wasn't emotional. It was legal. And that's the difference. People who walk away post-scandal usually try to control the narrative. Issue a statement. Post a cryptic story. This wasn't that. This was two people who knew the bridge was not only burned, but wired to explode. Everything leading up to that moment starts to make chilling sense when you run it back. The missing money. The edited-down screaming matches. The entire family's fade-out. The coded captions. The staged homecoming. The property under the father's name. The isolation of Elizabeth. The silence of Chuck. It wasn't just plot movement. It was a months-long, multi-season scrubbing. And the reunion? That was the boiling point. That was the moment when TLC, a network infamous for milking toxic couples for ratings, reportedly cut their biggest villain loose. Not because he was exhausting, but because he knew too much and said just enough. When production fears liability more than negative PR, something bigger than family drama was happening behind camera. So, where does that leave us? If the rumors are true, Andrei came onto this franchise with a background in surveillance, a record as a former Moldovan law enforcement officer, and a motive to escape debt and danger. He met the daughter of a distracted patriarch with a public financial empire and slowly peeled away every obstacle. Family? Humiliated. Father-in-law? Softened. Wife? Siloed. Even production was leveraged. He didn't win fans, but he didn't need them. He won access, power, profit, and when it was time to vanish, he walked away with green card security and alleged overseas property, registered in names that can't be traced back easily under American jurisdiction. He even slipped into the finale of his own story like a twist villain. No flames, no speech, just gone. Which leaves one question so uncomfortable that even the network won't touch it. Did Andrei Castravet win 90 Day Fiancé? Not in love, not on TV, on paper. He entered broke, undocumented, unpopular, and stonewalled by his wife's family. He left legally locked in, financially backed, with full control of his narrative and his exit. He beat production. He bled the brand. And he's still out there. But before you think this saga's over, it isn't. Because while they buried the footage, they forgot one thing. There's a missing voice, a Moldovan lead. Someone Andrei never expected to talk. And next time on Reality Sport, we're pulling the thread. Because if that secret child rumor is real, then someone has receipts. And Elizabeth might have not been the first collateral in this story.